beat Purdue.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini, a special Friday edition, half live and half pre-recorded segment. We're going to be talking Purdue today. Thank you for making us your first listen, not just today, but every single morning. Just know that we appreciate you. You can find us on your favorite audio platform or on YouTube. Just do a quick search for the Locked On Network, your team every day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at the Sunny V, find me at IlliniCast, or you can find me on all the socials. Just look for Locked On Illini. Big game on Saturday. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But before I do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with the $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, live show. So I appreciate all of you. Do me a favor. I want to hear your score predictions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. Jason, appreciate you. One of my everydayers. I know I've seen you all over Illini content. So I know you're a big fan. I appreciate you in every sort of way. I appreciate all of you everydayers. So please, if you're tuning into the show every single day, let me know in the chat. It's Friday. I'm just having fun today a little bit. Again, we're going to talk Purdue, but really it's a back and forth conversation with whatever you guys want to talk about. I will give you a little heads up. The first segment was actually recorded last night. I brought in Evan from the Boiler Breakdown pod. And so the new news that came out today about Hudson Card going to be missing Saturday wasn't quite official. We did kind of allude to it, that it could possibly happen. And fortunately, Evan did give us a background of what their backup quarterback looks like and what we can kind of expect. But the news wasn't official at the time, so we didn't really talk about it as a matter of fact. But we'll just go ahead and get started, and let's see what Evan has to say. All right, and as promised, on Saturday, Illinois will be battling the Purdue Boilermakers at 2:30 p.m. And I haven't had a proper Purdue preview as of yet, but I'm bringing on a special guest, Evan from the Boiler Breakdown podcast. Evan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Sam. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this game. I'm going to be as nice as possible when I ask you, what's happened?
Oh, man, if only we knew. Yeah, it's been... Yeah, that's just honestly been the question I've been asking myself since about, I guess, week 3 of the season, week 2 for Purdue, I guess, when they lost 66-7 to Notre Dame. Yeah, I don't know. It's so perplexing because it just feels like, coming into the year, I think of myself as a pretty optimistic Purdue fan. And I predicted on our podcast that we would win probably 5 games just because of the gauntlet of the schedule Purdue has, where you have obviously Notre Dame, and then the Big Ten, we play for the big boys, you play home against Oregon, at Ohio State, home against Penn State. And then obviously throw in, what I consider our peer programs like Illinois, Indiana, Michigan State. So nothing really set up well. Things had to go pretty well for Purdue to get to a bowl. So I was expecting, maybe, I could see Purdue winning 4 games again, like last year, but still look improved. And I would have been okay with that. But it has been way worse than I ever could have imagined.
It's tough because, the last time I saw Purdue obviously was a 44-19 victory by Purdue. And, we looked awful. It was Illinois' worst loss of last year. And from what I had been gathering, recruiting wise, Ryan Walters was doing a pretty decent job bringing in a pretty decent class. But now all of a sudden, I see that Purdue's lost, I think, 3 commitments just this week. And
I think it's up to 4 now. I think we lost one last night. Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, it just feels like, how confident are you that, Ryan Walters can right this ship, or are you not?
Well, if you would have asked me before last week, before the Wisconsin game, I would have thought it'll take a lot for him to lose his job prematurely, I guess, before the end of the season. Because we talked about the only way I could see them firing him, because obviously they got rid of Graham Harrell, offensive coordinator, after the Nebraska loss, which was warranted. The offense was just generic. Nothing was looking very good. You go back to last year, the last like 4 games, Purdue seemed to all of a sudden kind of find itself a little bit, got some wins at the end. So that kind of gave Purdue fans a lot of hope. Then coming into this year, it seemed to go just kind of right back to what we saw early part of last year, where you hear about this air raid offense, and we saw none of it. It kind of seemed to be dubbed the error raid by a lot of Purdue fans, because it was just nothing was going well. But after losing to just frankly a mediocre Wisconsin team with a backup quarterback, which Purdue fans were not. We were used to losing to Wisconsin. It's now been 18 straight. But it's just how we lost was just so disheartening. And now it's like, man, I don't know. Like I want him to do. I want him to right the ship, but I just don't know just what we've seen and just how we've just gotten our skulls kicked in for every game outside of Indiana State. I don't know if there's anything you can fix in season. It just seems like there's just too many holes to try and fix.
So let's get to the game itself. Saturday, 2:30. We'll start with the offense. The spread, surprisingly, opened up at, I think, -18 Illinois, but jumped up to as high as -23 on Thursday. That Thursday is when we're recording this. And there's rumors out there that Hudson Card might not be available Saturday, and that might actually be the reason for the 5-point swing. Have you heard anything about this? No, the first time I heard about it was on the Purdue message boards that were linking Illinois people talking about it. So I haven't heard anything from like the Purdue insiders. Not even so much as saying like, oh, hey, he was banged up in the Wisconsin game. We never heard anything of that. He didn't play in the second half, or a lot of the second half, but it was also because Purdue was down 1 million points. So that no one really thought anything of that. But yeah, if Card doesn't play, as bad as Purdue's offense looked, I can't imagine how much worse it can look. But yeah, because our backup is Ryan Brown. He played once last year against Northwestern when Card was hurt. That was a game probably if Card plays, Purdue wins, but Purdue ended up losing that game. So he can run a little bit. You saw him. He played one possession or one snap against Wisconsin. They tried a little trickery, which it was nice to see from us of not just watching inside zones 3 out of 4 plays. But they threw Card out out wide and then tried to run like an option, and it just did not go well. Like it almost resulted in a disastrous turnover in the red zone. But yeah, if Card can't play, it's going to be even worse. Yeah. Again, I'm not substantiating the rumor. I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea either. I kind of saw the same source that you did. And for me, I'm just perplexed at how a spread can move, 4 or 5 points in 12 hours. And, a starting quarterback could, not playing could be one of the reasons a line moves so drastically. But, besides the quarterback position, give me a couple other names on Purdue's offense. And now, granted, I know it's been a struggle on the offensive side of football, but you have a couple names, one in particular who Illinois fans are pretty familiar with. Yeah, Reggie Love, running back. He's been one of the few bright spots. Actually, really the 2 running backs, Devin Mockabee and Reggie Love, have been really probably the brightest spots on offense. Again, it just comes down to, when you can't throw the ball, it kind of makes it pretty easy for the defense to take advantage of that. But they've been, no fault to them. They've been, running their tails off and doing well. For a receiving core, Purdue got back their number 1 wide receiver, Jamal Edrin, who was a transfer from Florida Atlantic, who got hurt all of last year. I call him number 1 receiver, but he hasn't really proved to be number 1. Like, he hasn't really shown much of anything this year outside of playing well against Indiana State, but who wouldn't? He got hurt for a few games and was out. But Purdue's probably main targets right now are tight end Max Clare. He's probably been the most reliable pass catcher right now. And then I was actually talking to my co-host Tanner at our last game, and I think Jerron Tibbs, number 13, he's a sophomore out of Indianapolis. He's been kind of a go-to receiver for Hudson Card. There's rumors that potentially Purdue's getting a receiver back, CJ Smith, who is a transfer from Georgia this last offseason. He has not played at all this season. Supposedly he suffered a hamstring injury in August and has kind of been
week to week, it's always been, is CJ Smith going to play? Because all we've heard is he's got NFL type speed, can really take the top off the defense. But we're kind of the point now. I'll believe it when I see if he even plays. We've had a lot of issues with our Georgia transfers, so kind of a sour taste in our mouths.
All right, so we've talked a little bit on the offensive side. Well, what about the defensive side? Ryan Walters, when he was hired from Illinois and went to Purdue, he was considered one of the top up-and-coming defensive minds in the entire country, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with why Purdue would want to, hire him. So I'm curious, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, and who are the notable players that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, for the defensive side, honestly, going into the year, we thought the offense would be a little bit more ahead of the defense, but it's not been the case this year. Outside of Indiana State, Purdue has not scored in the first quarter of any game. So Purdue scored 49 points in the game with Indiana State. They have not scored 49 points in total in the game since. Not good. But on the defensive side, that's been, for as much as they've given up a lot, they have played well a lot in the first half. It gets to a point where, again, you've heard Ryan Walters talk a lot about complementary football, where the offense just is constantly going 3 and out, and the defense, by the time you get to the second half, they've usually played well for a half, but when you're constantly on the field, it's eventually the dam gives way, and it just that's when the flood happens. We saw we held Nebraska to 0 in the first half. It was tied 0-0. Ended up being a 28-7 game. Same with Oregon State was kind of the same thing. Wisconsin, it was 21-6, and obviously ended up a lot worse than that. But on the defensive side, player wise, Kydron Jenkins, who he's listed at linebacker, he played a lot last year on the rush edge, opposite of Nick Scorton, who's now on Texas A&M, doing really well down there. He actually got moved to linebacker in the offseason. I think it was his doing. I think because that's where he would probably play in the NFL. He's just not big enough to be a true rush end in the NFL, but you could just kind of tell he was out of position. So they've kind of moved him back to that rush end. Number 4, he's definitely kind of he's the captain of the defense. And then on the back end, you've got Dylan Thieneman, number 31, who plays defensive back, kind of safety. You saw a lot last year. He was that defensive back who was 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. But he was an All-American last year. He's kind of definitely going through a little bit of a sophomore slump. I'm not sure how much that's him and how much it's been, scheme as well. He's also returning punts this year, which was a problem. And in the Wisconsin game, as the first 2 punts he received, he fumbled them both. First one he got back, the second one he did not. So that's been an issue. But those are the 2 names for sure. If you're looking for on a positive for Illinois side, Nyland Green, he is another Georgia transfer who it was his second game back against Wisconsin. He just got picked on so much by Wisconsin. It was really bad. So if you want to look for someone to pick on, it's probably Nyland Green. But yeah, of our 2 best players, it's definitely Dylan Thieneman and Kydron Jenkins.
It's rough times in West Lafayette. So, obviously we all know Purdue's schedule is one of the most difficult in the country, and it's not going to get any easier after this Illinois game. Right before we wrap it up, how important is this Illinois game and trying to, get a win here because otherwise, I took a look at your guys' schedule before we started recording, and I don't know how many winnable games you guys have left.
Yeah. If I looked at my schedule right now, I'd probably say maybe 2. I think the one that I'd point to is Northwestern, just because it's at home. The other one I'd point to is at Michigan State, because Michigan State just has not been playing well. Going into the year, I looked at games that, the kind of the toss-up games I looked at were Oregon State, Illinois. I threw Nebraska in there because we didn't really know about Dylan Raiola. Michigan State, Northwestern, and Indiana, and Illinois have been playing really well to start the year. So I don't feel confident. But yeah, it'd be huge. One, just from I would think the staff is a little fired up about this game more than other games, just for obviously coming over from Champaign. But I would have thought too they were pretty fired up after getting their teeth kicked in against Notre Dame, and still kind of came out flat against Oregon State. So we'll see. But yeah, it would be huge just to get a road win, especially if it's a ranked team, for confidence. But this team is just so many issues, and they can't seem to get out of their own way. So when they make a mistake early on, it kind of seems like it just kind of oh no, here we go again feeling sets in, and it's just so hard to overcome.
Evan, I appreciate having you on. Please let the folks here know where they can find your content.
Yeah, so I'm part of the Boiler Breakdown podcast. I host it with two other good friends of mine. We grew up together. We're huge Purdue fans. We record during football season. We record once a week. We'll go live typically on Tuesday nights is usually when we try and do it. It just seems to work with our schedules. We go live on our YouTube, Facebook, and we have a Twitch channel. But obviously we record it so you can listen to it on all your favorite podcast networks or platforms. And then we also record during basketball season as well. Those are a bit more sporadic just because of the nature of college basketball season and scheduling. But then we usually take off for the summer just to kind of recoup.
Evan, I appreciate you coming on today, and good luck.
Appreciate it.
Not on Saturday, but
yeah.
I have a fond place in my heart for Ryan Walters. He was a big part of that team 2 years ago, so I don't exactly want him to fall flat on his face either.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Evan.
Yep.
ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout for 15% off.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right. I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate Evan from the Boiler Breakdown pod for joining me yesterday, episode that we recorded in the evening, just to kind of give an idea, a backdrop of Purdue and the Boilermakers and what they're going through right now. I've done a lot of Purdue content. If you follow me on my other channels, the Big Ten Show also has kind of a higher level view of Purdue and Ryan Walters. And so if any Purdue fans are tuning in right now, definitely do a search for Big Ten Show on YouTube. And we tried to figure out with Dustin Shute from Sports Illustrated what exactly is going on with West Lafayette. But for the most part, I know I'm speaking to Illini fans here, of which I am one. And I'm usually the type of guy who, maybe it's because I've been an Illinois fan for so long, that I would just be grateful, and I want to say, hey, let's just on Saturday show up. Even if we win by 1 point, I'll be grateful for it. Let's get to 5 wins and just be one away from a bowl game. Quite honestly, tomorrow's not one of those days. Tomorrow, because I don't know if it's because of our recent history with Purdue, losing 7 out of 8, the fact that Brett Bielema, I believe, is 0-3 against Purdue. We haven't beaten Purdue in Champaign. I think I saw a stat this morning since 2014. Of course, Ryan Walters being our ex-defensive coordinator, and then all the, I'm not going to say shady, but I feel like unprofessional way he's kind of handled things since he left Champaign, and probably the most important reason, we're battling for the same recruits. There's a couple guys who were committed to Purdue who actually are going to be visiting for this weekend, for this weekend's game. And hopefully Illinois is going to be able to lock some of these recruitments down. But having said all that, it's because I want Illinois to really beat Purdue's brains in on Saturday. And I think it's going to be very important for the visuals of this rivalry. Purdue has played 4 FBS teams, and they've lost by an average of 35 points. Last year, in my opinion, the most embarrassing loss of the season, Purdue beat Illinois 44-19, a game that Purdue themselves won only 4 games last year. It should have never been that lopsided. And if you know anything about Bret Bielema, he's letting his locker room, he's reminding them of that. I wonder if he's even showing them game tape of that game last year. We're not at the place where, things are bad for our friends out in West Lafayette, but we don't need to feel sorry for them. We need to put our foot down, and if we can score 40, score 40. If we can get to 50, get to 50. Hudson Card being out changes things. Hudson Card, despite his setback this year, he's still a very good quarterback. The running back situation between Maccabee and Reggie Love, it's become clear now what the game script needs to be for Purdue to come out victorious on Saturday. I don't even know what the spread is. If you guys are any gamblers in this chat, let me know what the spread has gotten up to. It's opened up at 18. Yesterday, as of the recording with Evan, it went up to 22.5 or 23. I don't know that now, since the news has become official, if the spread has gone even higher. But whatever the spread may be, we need to beat them by more than the spread. The only way Purdue's going to stay close in this game is if Devin Maccabee and Reggie Love and their backup quarterback, who apparently is a runner, they can drag this game out and they can score early and they can take advantage of what is one of Illinois' weaknesses coming into this year, and that is our rush defense. But we can't let it come to that. We need to continue our history of this game or of this season of just scoring on that first drive. We need to make Purdue pass that football because, quite honestly, they've shown no capabilities of doing it. And that was with a quarterback who, again, I think is a pretty decent quarterback in Hudson Card. This new kid, I don't think he can win a game with his arm. The game obviously is in Champaign. 5-1 matters. Being 5-1 going into that Michigan game means that the national audience is going to pay attention. We got the 2:30 slot. A lot of people are going to be, whether it's game day or big noon. We know in Champaign that game is already sold out. We know the buzz in the city amongst the students. It's going to be a really, really good time. At 5-1, the national audience will have to pay attention as well. Some of you everydayers know that in my bold predictions episode before the season started, I had predicted that Illinois could beat Michigan. Now it doesn't really seem all that of a bold prediction. I don't know if Illinois is going to be favored in that game. But even if they're not, I can't imagine the spread being by more than a field goal or so. But imagine being 5-1, going into Michigan, and then clinching a bowl game, and you're 6-1. Imagine what that does, the party that's going to be happening in Champaign that night. But that's something for us to discuss. We know we can't overlook Purdue. Even me talking about wanting to beat them by 4 or 5 touchdowns, we just need to beat them, period. That's what Bret's going to be telling them. But knowing Bret Bielema, I'll be honest. I think against certain teams, if we're up by a couple touchdowns in the third or fourth quarter, he would slow it down. He would start taking it easy. I don't think he's going to against Purdue. And honestly, I think it's justified. This rivalry matters. Right now, we're very fortunate, it looks like, that Purdue and Northwestern are going to be our locked in rivalries for the next X amount of years. I think it's for like a 5-year period. And not only are we going to be competing against Purdue every single year on the football field, but as I mentioned earlier, we compete with them off the football field when it comes to the recruits. So we need to get the visual out there. We need to show them a complete dominance and show that one program is on its way up under Bret Bielema. And sorry, Ryan Walters, I know you're an old friend, but it's not up to us for you guys to figure it out. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Once again, I appreciate all of you joining me live on this Friday. Hit that notification button while you're here. Tomorrow, after the game is over, I'm going to go live immediately, and we're going to be talking about it, hopefully in a celebratory mood. Hopefully it's not going to be a therapy session, because genuinely, I said this before, that I think this Purdue game was probably coming into the season the most important game on our Big Ten schedule, just because of everything it stands for. Granted, Purdue's season hasn't gone the way that I thought it was going to in the offseason, but as I said in the last segment, not my problem. Beat Purdue. While you're here, also, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Costs you guys nothing, but it helps me a great big deal. Find me at Illini Cast. We're going to be doing a pregame show tonight, Friday at 4 p.m. So me, Austin, and who knows who else might show up. We're going to do a little bit more long-form preview of the game. Let's go into some of your guys' predictions. Sean Gardner, appreciate you stopping by. He says 35-10 Purdue. Philip says 35-3. Brett calls off the Dogs in the second half. Jason wants to get Brian 2 touchdowns or 3. And Jason asks, Sunny, try and dig deep and see what is up with Big T. There's nothing for, I've asked. I think it wasn't this past week, but the week before I asked again, and it's simply we're waiting on the NCAA. I have contacts within Illinois, but not the NCAA itself. And so even the people I ask, it's like no new updates. So I wish I had something more, substantial I can tell you, Jason, but I really don't. But yeah, so for Saturday's game, I thought long and hard about where I think this game is going to end up. And I truly mean that if Brett and Aaron Henry have an opportunity to make this score as big as possible, they're going to try. Ultimately, on my official prediction on the Big Ten show yesterday, I believe I said 37-10. I think we can get to 40 if we want to. 37-10 is us being nice. And even that touchdown that they score may be one of those at the end of the games, just one gets by one of our second or third string secondary guys. I think Aaron Henry is going to try to send a message to his old boss. We have Bret Bielema, this is a huge recruiting weekend, guys. Huge recruiting weekend. That allotment that we have for this particular weekend is full. The last time we had it full, this full and with this quality of recruits coming in was that Kansas game. And the reason we had that much guys coming in, the staff invited that many people in, is because Brett really felt good. In hindsight, you can see it. Why invite this caliber of recruits if you think you're going to lose a game? He felt confident on the tape against Kansas, and he had a lot of players in that particular weekend. And he's doing the same thing this weekend, including Galloway, who was a 4-star cornerback, I believe, out of Ohio, who was committed to Purdue and just decommitted a couple days ago. He's the guy who's reached out to Illinois, actually, a little even before he had decommitted, and he's going to be an official visitor on the Illinois side. So do we have a chance to lock down a guy like him? Who knows? But it's all going to be about the atmosphere that we show. The crowd is going to be into it. I don't think this is going to be a sellout, but we should be pretty close. If you're going to be near Champaign, please go. Obviously, now I'm down in Austin, Texas, so it's hard for me to make the games now, but I'm still going to be trying to make that Michigan game. As I said, 37-10 seems about right to me, but I want pure dominance on that field. Let's celebrate. Let's get to 5-1, and then let's put forth our efforts on Michigan, because at 5-1, don't get hurt. Put on a good display. Move up in the rankings. We're at 23 right now. Let's make it a top 20 matchup against Michigan. Of course, it's Michigan, ironically enough, that's not doing their part right now. But a victory over Michigan will really get us recognized. I don't know about you guys. And again, it's a Friday show, so this is a little more free-flowing. I'm getting tired of this Indiana Hoosiers love that everyone's showing. You look at those games that they've played, those first 6 games on their schedule, there's 10 teams in the Big Ten that would be 6-0. I think that if Illinois and Indiana were to play, we would be on a neutral field, we'd be a pretty substantial favorite. Over a field goal at the very least. But we just don't have that opportunity. And Indiana's taking care of business. So it is what it is. All I know, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be a huge Nebraska fan in 2 weeks, because that helps us out in 2 ways. Them beating Indiana gets some of the luster off Indiana and some of the focus back on our Illini, who I think are a superior team. And at this point, we pretty much want Nebraska to win out, because the better they look, the better our victory in Lincoln is going to look. Sean says, how many turnovers do we get tomorrow? We're going to go for it. We're going to go for it. Absolutely. I think the second half is probably when you're going to see a little bit more separation. Purdue, if you take a look at their schedule, guys, they've got Penn State, Ohio State, and I believe Oregon coming up in 3 of their next 4 games or something like that. With that being the case, they need this victory against Illinois. If they don't win on Saturday, they're staring a 1-11 season in the face. It's almost at 2-10 might be their best case scenario. So you're going to get Purdue's best shot right at the beginning of the game. Their game against Nebraska was 0-0 at halftime. So it's not like they haven't done this before. But Purdue's also shown, whether it's against Notre Dame or Wisconsin last week, that their will can be easily broken. And that's what Illinois needs to do. I genuinely think that the second we go up multiple scores, that game is over. I don't think Purdue's mindset is strong enough right now for them to be able to make any sort of comeback. I think if we get up 10-0, 14-0, then we're looking at that final score in the 40s. And I genuinely think that can happen. Sean asks, does Oregon beat Ohio State? My predictions, yes. I like the fact that they're at home. Ohio State, I have a lot of respect for. I think they got the best skill position players in the country. But just the fact that they're at home, this game means a lot for Dan Lanning. I do feel it's kind of their way of making their presence known in this new conference in the Big Ten. But ironically enough, I had Oregon winning the regular season game and then Ohio State winning in the Big Ten championship. So I'm not going to go divert from my offseason predictions. Sean also asked, will anyone beat Penn State? Ohio State. Penn State has a very easy schedule. I talked about this with Zach. Zach doesn't agree. Zach Seiko, the Locked On Nittany Lions host. But Penn State is basically going to cruise through their schedule, which makes Purdue and Michigan all the more important for Illinois to win. Because if Illinois, I mentioned it, I believe on last week's episode, we're probably going to be favored in every game once we're done with Oregon. If we can finish the season at 10-2, with our only losses being against Oregon and Penn State, a Penn State team which may only have one loss, an Oregon team will probably with just one loss, we're going to be mentioned in that college football playoff. Whether we get it or not, I don't know. Our brand is certainly not quite at the level where we'd be a lock. We know Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State are going to take those first three spots. But if the Big Ten is going to have four, which I think they will, I think we're going to be in the conversation. And again, that's why we need Nebraska to continue winning. We need Indiana to take a step down because right now they are the darling of the Big Ten. But I think that'll just about wrap it up for today's episode. Please find me on at the Sunny V if you want to banter back and forth on Twitter. Tomorrow I'll be watching the game. I don't think I'll be doing a watch party, but immediately after, hit that notification button. While you're here, hit that like button and subscribe button as is. I think we're at 1,300. If you're not subscribed yet, please help me out. I think I'm at 1293 at the beginning of this show. I said this 2 weeks ago that my goal was to hit 1,300 by the kickoff for the Purdue game. So if you're not subscribed, or if you're already subscribed, go grab your boyfriend's phone or your wife's phone and find me on YouTube and hit that subscription button. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do the same thing on your favorite audio platform. The audio side, I'm humbled by how amazing we've been doing since the inception of the show. And I'll tell you, I've said this before on the show. 3 weeks ago, I had a conversation with the Locked On folks, and they were shocked at the growth of this channel, which pretty much started at the beginning of the off season. And it's all because of you guys. You guys make wanting to do daily Illini content easy to do because I know you guys are watching. And so I appreciate all of you. Again, let me know your final score predictions. Please join me tomorrow night. If you want to jump in on the call with me, I'll leave that opportunity. I'll probably leave a link in the description so we can do kind of a call-in style. You don't have to show your face, so don't worry about that. But until then, I love you guys.